Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Freedom Fighter. That's the guy you can see on screen right now, and as always I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So let's get right into it. What this character is going to be about is we are going to play as a unarmed character, first and foremost. But I decided to do something that I wanted to do for quite a while, which is really looking deeper into the legendary perks coming with melee combined with vats, with unarmed attacks, basically all the explosion stuff going on with legendary perks. And since we, due to that fact, have to invest into explosives anyway, what I decided to do was carrying a fatman as a backup weapon, which was actually basically the whole build was actually suggested by one of you guys, Fallout Museum. Thanks for the suggestion. It, Not to mock your suggestion or anything, but this is hardly something too unique or anything. It's actually quite a common kind of build. Obviously not this specific build in and of itself, but the idea of, well, just going all explosives on unarmed weapons nowadays. And I think the more rare thing you'll see in this video is actually carrying explosives as a backup, but even then, it's something you definitely see every now and then. The combination in and of itself works very well. I'm going into a little bit more detail later on as to why that is, but overall, yeah, the reason this is a relatively common build is it's basically, at least in my eyes, the most powerful approach when it comes to a melee character in this game. I know, obviously unarmed isn't melee, that's two different things in this game, but overall I think you get my point. Really close quarter combat without any ranged weapons. For me, unarmed weapons are just one kind of melee weapon still, but anyways, I digress. Yeah, simply put, melee in and of itself, and I will just go on for the duration of this video and call this melee, just so you know. Melee in and of itself is in a bit of an odd state for quite a while now when it comes to Fallout 76, for a very simple reason, which is that it's a very good kind of approach to the game for a casual player, as you first and foremost don't have to deal with ammo, which is quite obvious, and especially in the early game, it can actually be quite powerful, and that extends to pretty much the late game as well when it comes to general mobbing. Killing everything from red roaches like you just seen up to super mutants unarmed and melee can be a very good approach. The one thing holding these kind of builds back, as basically ever since the damage model was changed to additive damage rather than multiplicative damage, is that once you're fighting bosses like endgame bosses like the Scorpius Queen or Earl Williams, that's when melee and unarmed really start to lose their appeal a little bit. Just because you have kind of an upper limit on how much you can do. There's a ton of buffs you can use for melee and unarmed, but one thing they have in common is you just have to use a lot of them, and their return is relatively small. It's still definitely a good idea to use them, but just a try, but I think with a 9% bets hit chance I just saw, we're not going to hit him. Could take a while though, so well, that's where the fatman went. Anyways, back to the topic. So yeah, lots of buffs you can use as always, or as often. I don't really use them in the during the video, so you can imagine you can get quite a bit more damage out of the weapon, or weapons I want to add. But yeah, legendary perks, when they were introduced, they really changed it a little bit and gave some of the initial power of melee and unarmed builds back to them. With a very interesting approach. I was kind of surprised when I first saw it. Yeah, basically Bethesda went all in on using these explosive perks, which seemed a little odd. Now, giving melee a kind of area of effect damage was a cool addition. I really wished for something like that from the beginning of the game when it comes to two-handed slugger weapons, for example, so they can attack more than one enemy at a time. But yeah, it was an odd choice for the legendary perks, and I think Bethesda went a little bit overkill on them. Regarding how, yeah, pretty much every single addition to melee and unarmed ever since has basically leaned into this idea, and nevertheless, it's very fun. It can be a ton of fun to use these kind of builds, and it's, I mean, what's not to like about punching someone and see how he or she or it explodes. It's a very neat idea. It's very fun. I find it a little bit immersion breaking, which is, I mean, we're fighting radioactive bats with a portable nuke launcher, but um, it's kind of immersion breaking in a way, you see. For a lot of weapons, I think it kind of works. For example, the one I went here with is the gauntlet, just because, I mean, this will sound a little bit stupid, but it seems believable that such a pneumatic fist basically can have some sort of shockwave or something. It's a bit stupid when you're using something like a combat knife or so, or a katana, or you name it. I think you get the point here. But for certain characters, I think it's a really neat idea, and you can actually, once you're getting your legendary perks up, which I just did by going into a custom world where I can, without any hesitation, just scrap all of my perk points to pretty much no limit. Um, I mean, the only limit is how many perk points I do have, and yeah, just use all of those perk points in order to yeah, level up my legendary perks. And so I managed to get hack and slash as well as fist of palms or something like that, the unarmed version, up to rank 3 out of 4, which then is 5. You get the point. So yeah, we do have a very good chance to actually make enemies explode, which is nice. Really want to get that assaultron out of the way, which luckily we did. We are pretty tanky for a non-power armor character, so we most likely would have been able to deal with this guy anyways, but yeah, that assaultron is better than any other assaultron basically, so I mean, that is not really the right term, is it? Destroyed would be more fitting, but anyways, you can see how yeah, the fatman is definitely a weapon I do like to use. It's when I started this build, the only fear I had was that I would just end up carrying the fatman for no good reason and only use it for the sake of using it, which actually, to be fair, is how it often turned out when I thought, hey, I already invested into Demolitions Expert, I might as well carry some explosives as a backup weapon. And yeah, most of the times I found that I just never used them unless I wanted to for fun, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I do that oftentimes, using weapons just for fun. But on this occasion I actually found that, yeah, the fatman as a backup really added something to my build that otherwise it was missing. Most notably its range. So as you saw earlier, fighting a Scorch Beast. Now obviously if it goes to the ground I would just start whacking it with my gauntlet. But yeah, sometimes you just have those situations where the Scorch Beast refuses to land, and for that situation it's perfect to have some ranged option. And other than that, yeah, similar to that, sorry, yeah, the Assaultron here was a good situation where I like to use the fatman, just because it makes it kind of unnecessary to go toe to toe with it. Meaning you can just approach him from a safe distance and take him out immediately. And by the way, haven't really talked about it yet. When it comes to the weapons, I usually show them up later in the game, but we do have an anti-armor, swing speed, less vest cost, gauntlet, and a 2-shot vats hit chance. Fatman. As for the fatman, I think it was pretty obvious I had to go for 2-shot. I really think about making an explosive build that doesn't rely on 2-shot, just because I hate that it's such a necessity in my eyes to always go for Twoshot, and just because it's so much better than everything else. But for this occasion, yeah, I just went with that. Obviously, Vats hit chance kind of nice. And when it comes to the gauntlet, I wanted to show this a little bit early because I want to talk about it a little bit more. Really, it started to dawn on me that looking at my builds, you could get the impression that when it comes to melee or unarmed weapons, I'm a super big fan of unarmed anti-armor effect, just because I happen to pretty much always use it. It's not actually the case. I find it's definitely one of the better legendary effects when it comes to melee weapons. But it's not the best. I just happen to always get the good stuff I'm actually looking for, talking about swing speed and on this occasion also less vats cost, in combination with anti-armor, which is nothing I want to complain about, but just to make sure, yeah, it's not that I was actively looking out for an anti-armor swing speed version of this weapon. I would have been perfectly fine with vampires, which I think would be the best option for this build. But to be honest, I was really unlucky with crafting. I spent about 15 minutes just hammering the hammering the X button on crafting gauntlets, or basically re-rolling my gauntlet to get a version with swing speed and less vats cost. That's what I was actually looking for, because if you haven't noticed so far, we use vats pretty much all of the time with our gauntlet, simply because it gives us access to the chance of making an explosion, even more than just using a unarmed weapon to begin with. And therefore, yeah, less vats cost was really nice. Other than with ranged weapons, we don't really have modifications for the gauntlet or any unarmed or melee weapon for that matter to reduce action point cost. So the only way to make your attacks more action point friendly is the less vats cost effect. And to be quite honest with you, when it comes to melee and unarmed weapons, it's not like you have a ton of great options for third effect. Obviously, bit of extra strength is kind of nice, but mostly we're talking about like 2 to 5 more damage points, which is negligible to be honest. And other than that, yeah, it's probably the next best thing I can think of if you're not using vats is actually less damage while power attacking. So yeah, less vats cost was kind of obvious for me as a choice, and swing speed also is. When it comes to melee weapons, I really think there's no other thing to go for than swing speed or power attack damage. Since we are using vats all of the time, power attack damage obviously isn't too big of a deal for us. We're just not power attacking unless we're running out of action points, and at that point we refresh them very fast. So yeah, it was swing speed. Now there could be an argument for vats critical hits doing more damage, but I really think that unless you are actually going all in on vats crits, that's a bit of a lost cause. It doesn't add too much, to be honest, and I tried it in the past. It's definitely a fun build as well. I mean, going for vats crits with a melee or unarmed weapon, but the return is relatively small compared to just boosting your damage otherwise. We do use vats all of the time basically, but we just didn't have the perk points to really go into luck and improve our criticals and all that stuff for how little it returns. Now when it comes to crits, just give me a second by the way because I have to remember this, but I recently just really reread the wiki and some posts and everything, really trying to get behind how crits actually work in this game. And basically the way they work is if you do a crit, you do get 1 times your base damage of the weapon, and you can boost that with better criticals, legendary effects, so on, which then boost its damage. But on paper it just gives you 1 times extra base damage and armor penetration. Armor penetration, for the same reason as anti-armor in and of itself, is already kind of redundant because we have such a potent armor penetrating perk, which is Incisor. And after that, yeah, we also have anti-armor on this weapon. The real matter here is that, yeah, the base damage of the weapon isn't high. Looking at a build with no talents, no twisted muscles, only one strength, no bloody mess, no unarmed perks, no everything, we are probably looking at a base damage of 30 or 40 for this weapon, so it's just not that big of a deal. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the gameplay part of the video. I'm pretty sure I can fairly certainly say that, yeah, this was a very powerful build. Really enjoyed it, really no limits whatsoever. This is one of the unarmed or melee builds I would actually go toe-to-toe against something like Earl Williams or the Queen with. Just because we're not a low health build, I wouldn't really try soloing them. That's just a time thing. But yeah, I wouldn't feel useless when just joining a Scorched Earth event, for example. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it so far. And now we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, and everything else. So starting off with our mutations. Here we have them, and what's quite typical for a unarmed build in my eyes, we do have quite a few mutations, so let's get right into it. We do have Bird Bones, which is one of the more controversial picks here. 4 extra agility at the cost of -1 strength. -1 strength obviously means we're doing a little bit less damage, but really it's not too crazy. Obviously you shouldn't start just stacking up debuffs to your strength. It really can sum up to quite an extent, but just -1 strength is not the world. And I think getting more action points from Bird Bones in addition to getting reduced fall speed and fall damage was quite worth it. However, keep in mind this is something you have to find out for yourself. I just feel like, yeah, -1 strength isn't worth thinking about it, to be honest. Then we do have Carnivore. Obviously, when it comes to melee and unarmed build, a ton of the best buffs you can get are actually meat-based food. So yeah, we're talking about Deathclaw steaks and all that jazz. I have made builds that used it, and you find very, very good guides online on other channels, particularly looking into that. For the sake of my video, I haven't used any buff whatsoever. But keep in mind, yeah, with Carnivore you can get some really crazy buffs going on if you really manage to stack them up. Then we do have Chameleon. This is just a leftover from a very old build at this point, but I never really bothered to remove it because it has virtually no downside to us, as well as having no benefit to us, as long as we're wearing armor, which we do. So that's just dead weight there, but you can ignore it. Then we do have Healing Factor, and while I'm always mixed about it, it's not a mutation I am super in love with. It's nothing I hate. Some people hate it with a passion, some people love it equally. I personally like it whenever I am on a character where I just know that whenever I'm fighting, I'm going to take significant damage, which very much is the case here. Because it means whenever you're fighting, you just have to survive the encounter, and that's it. You're regaining all your health very fast afterwards, so yeah, being tanky enough to survive individual encounters makes it so you can get out of there without using a stim pack whatsoever. I just think, like, yeah, even if you're leaving the fight with 80% health or so, if you don't have Healing Factor, maybe it's just my OCD or something, but I just feel like I have to use a stim pack afterwards, even though it wouldn't matter probably. But yeah, the downside is that our chems, and that includes our stim packs and red away and stuff, are 13% less effective. However, I felt like we can get away with that. I'm pretty sure I even have, no, I don't have first aid, but yeah, we can still get away with it. After all, we're pretty tanky, so even if we need stim packs, yeah, it's rather rare that during a fight we do need a stim pack, and so we can afford to just use 2 or 3 of them. Then we have Marsupial, because of course we do. Extra carry weight is nice, but yeah, let's face it, jumping higher is a must-have, and so is Speed Demon for faster movement speed. Pretty straightforward here. No reload speed. I mean, we do basically get a benefit for the reload speed when it comes to our fatman, but we could live without it. The main reason here is the movement speed for speed demon. Then we do have Scaly Skin for the cost of 12 AP, which sounds a little bit contradictory because for earlier I said I want to boost my action points with extra agility from bird bones, and now we're taking a mutation that decreases our action points. But yeah, they're not really equally here. 1 point of agility is actually like 10 action points. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's 5, but I'm pretty sure it's 10. So yeah, we're looking at 40 action points gaining from bird bones and losing 12 from Scaly Skin, which is a good cost benefit here. But yeah, really what we want to have here is 15 extra damage and energy resistance. Now 50 damage and energy resistance isn't the world, so you can definitely live without it. However, I felt it was kind of neat just to give us more tankiness, even if it's not the world. But it can really stack up with armor and makes it so you can get away with less good armor, let's say that way. As you noticed, we're not running around with Secret Service or full set of heavy combat armor or something like that. We're having a set of medium combat armor. I think the legs are heavy, but yeah. Anyways, 50 extra damage and energy resistance. Not the most necessary thing in the world, but I thought it was nice and was worth the cost. And that leaves us with two of the basically no-brainers, to be honest. Talents, 25% more unarmed damage, added bleed damage. Bleed damage is always nice, at the cost of -1 to agility. Obviously, it would be nice to not have a debuff to agility here, but you just can't use an unarmed build without talents. Let's face it, why would you? So yeah, that's that. And then we do have Twisted Muscles. While it states melee damage, it does also affect unarmed weapons, which further proves my point that it's stupid. I mean, it's nice that we have the specification for various versions of melee weapons, but calling them unarmed weapons doesn't make them non-melee in my opinion anyways. Yeah, yet again, extra damage, a chance to cripple, which is nice, and gun accuracy being down. We are using a gun for once, in form of the Fatman, but basically we're just aiming for torsos anyways, so we do have a good vats hit chance to begin with, and also we do have extra vats hit chance as a legendary effect, as I shown earlier. In terms of special stats, we're not in the realms of too crazy here. 19 strength and 15 endurance. These are the interesting ones, combined with agility, which is also high. The rest is absolutely irrelevant. We don't use luck really. We don't use charisma at all, and perception also is negligible. Just yeah, it is a nice little tiny buff to our vats hit chance when it comes to the Fatman, but for reasons mentioned already, accuracy is not really the problem with the Fatman. Obviously, the higher your strength, the better. Endurance, nice if it's higher, but not too necessary. Strength could be way higher. I only have legendary strength of 2, which obviously you want to have maxed out. It was just I wanted to focus more on the legendary explosive perks. So yeah, that's why legendary strength stood as it was already. So keep that in mind. There's room for improvement here. And then yeah, I already shown the weapons briefly. Just a little bit more talk about it. One thing is that yeah, when it comes to condition, depending on how much you're fighting during your gameplay, I mean obviously there will be times where you're just roaming around. This thing will obviously last longer. But if you really just grind out Westag, White Spring, you know the places, yeah, you should be ready to repair this thing every now and then. It definitely breaks relatively fast, and for once we don't really have any perks or so to help us with that. So yeah, be ready to repair it. Well, it was repaired to like 170% when we started the video, so yeah, just so you have a reference. When it comes to modifications, I went with the shock pads here. They are better in my eyes, just from a damage perspective. Will probably be even a little bit better once the basically bug fix, but let's face it, it's a buff to energy weapons. will come sooner or later, but that should be marginable. It's not that bad, and we also already have armor penetration. So, anyways, um, I personally can't really decide which gauntlet I find cooler, the one without the shock pads, which has this buzzsaw, or the one with shock pads. I really like both. In terms of visuals, they're really great additions to the game. But yeah, not a lot to talk about here, so yeah, let's move on. Um, there's the Fatman, and this is equally as little to talk about because, yeah, same goes for condition. It will break relatively fast, however, you're not using this thing constantly, so that shouldn't be a problem. You can obviously go for the Murph launcher, however, I didn't really find any use for that because the gauntlet is actually a really good solution to crowd fighting. So yeah, if you're fighting hordes of ghouls and everything, I would definitely always go for the gauntlet just because it's also more fun. So really what we want to do here is go for single targets with the Fatman, and therefore yeah, the Murph launcher just is kind of unnecessary and actually a downgrade in my eyes. So yeah, no modification here, just the basic Fatman, and as you can see with Twoshot and Demo Expert, we're doing pretty good, 1,800 damage. So yeah, pretty massive. In terms of armor, as I already said it, we have a full set of medium combat armor. I'm pretty sure the legs are medium too, but they could be heavy. I could be wrong here, but I think it's all medium size. Sorry, not size. Um, medium armor, sturdy. Sorry, always got it wrong. And in terms of legendary effects, I want to have a full set of action point refresh. And what I also have is a Ghoul Slayer's piece, a Troubleshooter's piece, a Hunter's piece, just for some mixed match protection. Not my favorites. I would ideally like Hunters to be Mutant Slayers, and Ghoul Slayers can stay as it is, to be honest. But yeah, at least one Mutant Slayer's piece would have been nice. But to be honest, I'm not too picky. I just wanted to have something with action point refresh, and then I do have two pieces of mutants, which just gives us a little bit more resistances, which also isn't too necessary, but not too shabby either. There's just better options out there. Really, yeah, as I said, what I was looking for is action point refresh. Now, what's nice is we do have, I think it's even two pieces, or no, it's only one piece of Cavalier. So, swing speed, sorry, action point refresh Cavalier set, that would be my go-to if I had to choose. And in terms of resistances, you can see there we do have 305 damage and 349 energy resistance. So we are scrapping by the point of diminishing returns when it comes to damage resistance, and we're pretty good when it comes to energy resistance. So really, you can see here, scaly skin isn't super unnecessary here. And yeah, in terms of under armor, I think it's pretty obvious we're going for shielded operative, just for extra strength and perception. I mean, it would obviously be a little bit better if we had Secret Service, but I think I don't really have it on this character or something. So yeah, this will do for now. Obviously, as I said, Shield Secret Service would be a little bit better for strength instead of 3, and we don't really use perception, so having 4 extra endurance instead of perception would also be nice. But yeah, that's about it when it comes to the visuals. Obviously, there's a little bit of a clash here using shielded urban operative under armor, which is basically enclave stuff, and we're obviously going for a little bit of a free states build. But to be honest, since it's under armor, it doesn't really look like it, so you can really see it. And as I said, the better option would be Secret Service, anyways. So yeah, let's move on to our perks. We do have 15 strength, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We do have Iron Fist here, pretty straightforward, bit of extra damage with our melee weapons, sorry, with our unarmed weapons. Then we do have Ordnance Express. So this is one of the reasons why I think that unarmed is actually one of the better builds to combine with explosive when it comes to melee, because you just need 3 ranks of Iron Fist. You don't really have to bother using Slugger, Expert Slugger, and Master Slugger, for example. So you do have room for stuff like Ordnance Express. If I were to go with something like a Gladiator or Slugger build, I would go with rank 1 of each of the perks, and yeah, use the same one, same other perks here. Ordnance Express, obviously we want to reduce the weight of our mini nukes. Now we do have very good carry weight, just because we are very strong build, and don't carry a lot of other stuff. So yeah, you could get away without Ordnance Express, but really, if there's any ammo that stacks up quickly, it's mini nukes. Now, obviously, you don't need a ton of them. You could just always venture out with like 5 of them or so. But I wanted to have at least something in the realm of 50 mini nukes with me, just so I can play for a little longer and don't have to think about every one I use. So yeah, Ordnance Express was kind of a must-have for me. Then we do have Blocker, obviously very good pick when it comes to defense. 45% less damage from melee attacks is neat, especially on a melee build where you're always within melee range when fighting. And lastly, we do have Incisor and Martial Artist. These are very obvious picks here. Incisor for armor penetration. We do have the anti-armor effect on our weapon, but so that means, for example, I would maybe not bother using a armor penetration perk that adds like 10% armor penetration or so, but 75% is so massive that even after an enemy's armor is already reduced by 50%, you're still getting a great benefit from it. So yeah, Incisor is here. And lastly, you will see a little bit of surprise. I'm not sure if you noticed, I how is it called, purposefully not said anything during the video, because I was actually yeah, I was wondering if any one of you would notice it. Yeah, Martial Artist wasn't maxed out. There's a simple reason for it, which is I'm stupid. As you can see down there, I scrapped all of my perk cards in order to rank up my legendary perks, and in the process I actually scrapped Martial Artist rank 3, which I was actively using at the time. Don't ask me how, I'm not sure, I was just triggering, I was just spamming through it. So yeah, I deleted it and only had 2 perk points or 2 level ups left. So I went with rank 2 of Martial Artist and figured I wanna play till I level up in order to give you the full build, but I figured we were doing fine even with only 40% weapon weight reduction and 20% faster swing speed. So yeah, obviously now we can do it. I mean, not that it matters because custom will and everything, but where is it? Am I stupid? I mean, we already said I am, but yeah, here it is, Martial Artist, rank it up, and yeah, that's how it's supposed to look. Martial Artist, rank 3, 60% less weapon weight and, well, unarmed melee weapon weight, and 30% faster swing speed. Let me know if you noticed that we were swinging slightly less fast than maybe you do usually. Then we do have Grenadier at rank 2. Pretty obvious choice on this occasion. We do have the Fatman, which greatly benefits from it. We can obviously throw grenades. We have everything we need. I just never really used them, to be honest. So yeah, this is for the Fatman and for some of our explosions. I said some because this is another thing I really just looked at a little bit deeper through the wiki and through forum posts and everything. And yeah, it's quite interesting when it comes to legendary perks. Iron Explosive Palm, that's the one that's mentioned, is the perk that gives you a chance to make an explosion happen when attacking an enemy with a unarmed weapon, and its explosion apparently is enhanced. The radius is enhanced with Grenadier, which is great news. And it's not really apparently, it's definitely the case. It is increased. What was more interesting though is that for some reason hack and slash seems to be working quite differently to most of the other explosive perks, which is it is not boosted by Grenadier apparently, and also it has another damage model. It apparently is not increased. The damage from the explosion from hack and slash is apparently not increased from demo expert, but rather just adds 1 times your damage, your base damage, so basically like a crit. While explosive palm is a combination of your damage output and demo expert and everything. So it's really kind of complicated, and basically the only reason we really know is from data miners, because it's really hard to test that stuff, especially if you have both of them on. Obviously you can't tell them apart, so you really have to run individual tests, and since you can't make them happen like on demand, it's really hard to test that kind of stuff. So there's really a lot of different information to find about these kind of perks. We're looking at them in a few minutes, don't worry. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I do think I have a good understanding of how they work, but I could be wrong. So maybe you have some other info, you can leave it in the comments. I'm always glad to read those. And yeah, that being said, we're moving over to endurance. It's maxed out just because I want it to be a little bit more tanky, and while a lot of people, even on tank characters, treat endurance like a dumpster, I like it. I agree that at a certain point it's not the most necessary thing, or shouldn't be your focus if you're lacking in other departments, but for the sake of it I wanted to have it maxed out here. And the first thing I see here is Ironclad, which I want to talk about by the end, would like to talk about by the end, because it was just a filler perk. I wanted to have endurance maxed out and had 12 perk points spent, which I definitely wanted to have, meaning I had 3 perk points left, and those went into Ironclad, because at that point there wasn't really anything I desperately needed, and felt like, yeah, as you saw, the resistances were not crazy high, so improving them a little bit, even though if it's maybe a little bit of a high investment into in terms of perk points. Yeah, 30 extra damage and energy resistance. Everything I said about Scaly Skin basically also applies here. Then we do have Ghoulish, which is a perk I really like on a lot of occasions, and especially on melee characters outside of power armor. Yeah, basically fighting ghouls, that's the main thing here, but also being near a fissure site means you're getting constant healing going on. So Ghoulish is really one of those perks that from the beginning of the game was really overlooked. It has it had a slight kind of shining moment when legendary perks were introduced, and Angry Turtle, at least he was the first one I saw talking about it, talked about how well it synergizes with water rats. Anyways, then we do have solar powered, which obviously during the day we do get extra buff to strength and endurance, which is perfect for our character. Extra damage with our melee weapon, a little bit more tankiness, with no downside. Obviously it doesn't work all of the time, but yeah, over the day we do have a benefit for it. I really like it for melee builds. Then we do have Adamantium Skeleton, just meaning we don't have to use Stimpaks to heal broken limbs because they don't break. And lastly, Fireproof. You could obviously get around just using a dense chest piece, but on this occasion I went for a pneumatic chest piece. I failed to mention the modifications on the armor earlier, but nothing too crazy. Custom fitted for reduced sprint cost on the legs, aerodynamic on the arms for reduced power attack, action point cost, even though we're not power attacking, but there just isn't anything else we could really use. I mean, brawlers and stuff. When it comes to unarmed, there's some combinations you can go with, but they don't really matter too much anyways. And yeah, for the torso I went with pneumatic just to reduce the incoming stagger, which is nice. And yeah, I went for fireproof when it comes to our perks, just so we don't have to worry about explosions and stuff. Then in charisma, something you very rarely see, because I usually either have tenderizer, lone wanderer, or both of them. That's just a very common combination I go for when with charisma. Just because, yeah, tenderizer is always a good option, and it would be here as well. I just felt like it wasn't necessary, so we could live without it, and for once I didn't want to use it. You can obviously use this as a team build, meaning running in a team. You don't have any downside from being in a team. The only thing is you're not really meant for it either. You can't really add a lot to it, but strange in numbers means that your mutations are getting a little bit more potent, and that's especially beneficial on an unarmed character, because you do have two mutations that boost your damage directly. Then, for example, carnivore is boosted, so you would get even more buffs from your meat and everything. So, yeah, strange in numbers, not a bad decision here. Going over, this was kind of obvious. We do have Demolitions Expert in Intelligence maxed out. Firstly, to max out the damage on our Fatman, and as I said, apparently it works for Explosive Palm as well, and collateral damage. It just apparently doesn't work or increase your damage from hack and slash. But anyways, it's here, and it's a good idea that it is here. That means we're going over to agility, which is the third stat that is maxed out for us, and we have Action Boy for even faster AP refresh. Obviously not really necessary, considering we do have 5 powered pieces of armor, but yeah, I just wanted to double down on it. What else? Then we do have Marathoner. Actually, one of these perks I really like for the convenience of it. It actually adds a lot. I just often find that there are other more pressuring issues I want to tackle with agility. But on this occasion there wasn't anything I desperately needed, so I went for Marathoner just to reduce the amount of action points it takes to sprint. That combined with very high agility and very high endurance means that we use very little action points when sprinting, and yeah, basically we can cover the distance between us and an enemy very fast, sprinting there, not losing a lot of action points in the process, and having a lot of action points left in order to start the fight. Then we do have 1 rank of Gun Fu, just because it's fun to whack someone, one-shot him, and then go over to the next enemy. It doesn't work perfectly with this build, because actually sometimes the explosion that triggers from Explosive Palm, Hack and Slash, you name it, can basically break Gun Fu. But every now and then it happens, and it's fun to have, and it's just 1 perk point, so might as well have it here. And then we do have White Knight. This was a bit of an obvious pick. It's one of those, either you hate it or don't, or you use it or whatever. I always like it on characters similar to Healing Factor, where I know I will take a lot of damage, because there's nothing I hate more than repairing armor in this game. I really think that weapon repair adds something to the gameplay, but for some reason when it comes to armor it's just frustrating. Maybe it's the fact that you have to keep track of 5 pieces that always going to break at different paces. Yeah, I just like to have White Knight on me all the time to reduce the amount of times I have to repair my armor, and to reduce the crafting cost. Repair cost, sorry. And lastly, we do have Adrenaline, because of course we do. Such a good perk, and you didn't really think that when I'm not using Tenderizer I'm also not using Adrenaline, right? So yeah, more damage when fighting enemies within a certain time. You're killing them within a minute, you're getting 60% extra damage. And this was really a bad explanation of the perk, but I explained it so often and used it so often that I think there's not a lot to say here. I mean, read the description, it's really straightforward, to be honest. And that meant we are only left with Luck, Class Freak, and Starch Genes. So Starch Genes is pretty obvious. We want to keep our mutations and not get any new ones. And Class Freak, as you saw, we have quite a lot of mutations going on, and quite a lot of them have debuffs that would actually be relatively bothersome to our character if they weren't reduced so heavily by Class Freak. So on this occasion this was a must-have. As I said, you could really, if you have access to a lot of perks, legendary perks, you could go more into using crits, but you just have to do it at the expense of something else. This was stupid. Talking about legendary perks, here they are, and soon you will see what I'm talking about when I say there's not a lot of room to get us extra special points, because the only ones we are boosting here is Legendary Endurance and Strength. Strength is very obvious, to give us more melee damage. Endurance, less obvious but still kind of obvious. Extra hit points means less damage, not less damage taken, but more damage to be taken until we die. So yeah, this in my eyes is one of the only legendary perks you could just ditch and use something else, maybe Legendary Luck or something. Because it's not so necessary, but really not going for Legendary Strength would feel very odd. And other than that, we actually for once have quite a few perks that aren't boosting any special stats, but rather are actually otherwise beneficial to us. So as you see there, we do have collateral damage, exploding palm, and hack and slash. At the beginning of the video I said I had exploding palm and hack and slash at rank 3, which was obviously wrong, as you can see here. Forgot about that. I maxed out hack and slash, so we have a 50-50 chance of triggering an explosion when attacking in vats with a melee weapon, including unarmed weapons, which is great. 50-50 chance is pretty good. It's pretty close to a 50% chance actually. So yeah, that's it. Exploding palm. Rank 2 means a 10% chance to triggering an explosion with an unarmed weapon, so obviously this would be my next focus to max out. And lastly, we do have collateral damage. In my eyes, the least favorable explosive perk, other than far-flung fireworks, but talking about melee and unarmed. It only can trigger when you kill an enemy, 13% chance, so slightly higher than explosive palm, but as I said, only when you kill an enemy. That being said though, you're killing a lot of enemies, so still, if we already have exploding palm and hack and slash, you might as well go all in and use collateral damage as well. And lastly, we do have vats. So this is the other legendary stat I would argue, sorry, legendary perk I would argue you can get away without and used for something else, just to give yourself more perk points. But yeah, ultimately I felt like, yeah, investing into luck in addition to all of this was kind of a waste. And yeah, vats is here just for convenience again. Yeah, I don't really like to use red away for some reason. It's just bothering me. It's not as simple as using a Stimpeg, which is already bothering me. So yeah, vats just became kind of a staple for all of my builds. It's the epitome of a food perk, actually, food build perk. But I just, whenever I'm not using it, it bothers me instantly when I have like 5 rats or something. So I'm sure there's some of you out there who agree with me. It's by far not the most necessary perk by any means, but I just like it. And yeah, I have a feeling this was one of the longer videos. It's just because, yeah, basically I'm so slow when it comes to releasing builds lately, that whenever I do, I have a lot to talk about, and I'm just out of fashion, to be honest. But I still enjoy it. I'm just really occupied with my work, but fear not, next week and then we're pretty done. So yeah, that being said, this was the Freedom Fighter. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time, guys. Bye.